My name is Kulvinder Johal, and I'm an experienced primary teacher, SLT member. I was a science lead, of course. I worked in a large primary school, fourth form-entry multicultural primary school in East London. And we spoke, within our school, our children spoke about 45 to 50 different languages. So you can imagine there were quite a lot of diverse needs. So as well as EAL children, obviously there were SEND children and behaviourally challenging children. So our session this afternoon is about supporting children with diverse needs. And I come to this as somebody who's taken part in the Great Science Share, someone who's organised a Great Science Share across my borough, and as a regional mentor for the Primary Science Teaching Trust, and as a Great Science Share champion as well. That's my experience, and that's what I'll be talking about, the experiences that I've had and strategies that we've used. So I'm hoping the aims of the session this afternoon are to consider the needs of those diverse children in our school and in supporting them to take part in the Great Science Share for schools, how to facilitate the involvement of those children. And we're looking particularly at the SEND children, EAL children, and children who have low science capital. So hoping that we can engage them and involve them and encourage them to share as part of the Great Science Share's philosophy. A key part of the Great Science Share is participation and being inclusive. And that is actually, one of the foundations of the Great Science Share, and we're really proud of that. So hopefully during the course of the session, we're going to look at some creative ways to record and respond to the children and encourage them to come up with questions and how they can then share those questions with an audience. So our classrooms, what do they look like? Well, in our classroom, we are going to have there are going to be diverse children in our classroom. And that can be because they speak a range of languages. It could be because they are behaviourally challenging. It could be that they are reluctant speakers. It could be that they are shy. And with that comes personality. So every classroom is very different. And as teachers, we know that no one class is the same. And that's, the beauty of our job. We have characters in the classroom, children who have good days and bad days, children who are steady emotionally, children who come in with a mood, children who have had difficulties at home, children who are disengaged. It may be the disengagement is something that is quite long term. It can be something that is sort of sporadic. It could be periodical. So children come to us every day. They've got different moods. They've got different anxieties. They've got different attitudes. That is our classroom, and that is the wonder of being classroom teacher. So in our classroom, we are likely to have, all of these things happening in our rooms and across our year group, across our school. And as teachers, it's our job to try and engage every single child. And we try and do that in every single lesson through our planning, through the resources that we're using, through the tasks that we're setting our children, through the way we group them, through the way we use our extra adults, if we have any, through differentiation. So all of those are strategies that we're using all the time in our classroom, every lesson, every day. Part of the Great Science Share for schools is how to engage our children in that formulating and asking of questions. So what we want the children to do as part of Great Science Share is to be curious, is to come up with investigations, is to ask questions and to formulate questions, which they can then go on and address, work on, and hopefully come up with some solutions, possibly come up with more questions. And a way of doing that is providing an appropriate stimulus for your children. And it could be different stimulus for different stimuli for different children. It could be one thing for the whole class. It might be that you have different stimuli for different children, depending on what their interests are and what they're keen on and context. So for instance, an example here is this child. And I haven't been at my school now for 3 years nearly, but this child is a memorable child because this child, he was very keen, his stimulus was the outdoor area and he liked being outside. He didn't like being in class because he couldn't think well in class. He preferred to be outdoors, and he seemed to have an abundance of questions when he was outside, because there was a sense of freedom, and the fact that he felt comfortable out there enabled him to come up with questions and to speak. So he came out with questions around, you know, the different vegetables that we were growing. Why were we growing things when, you know, at different times of the year? What fruits could we grow? What fruits couldn't we grow? What were some of the mini beasts out there? So very much linking in with mini beasts and habitats. Lots of questions, and then that link directly with curriculum. So looking at food chains, looking at soil, looking at what plants need to grow. All of those things were results of him having questions whilst he was outside. So for him, that was a great stimuli. For other children, it could be that they like things to be smelly. They like things to be noisy. So it could be that you're going to use smelly things like poo, animal poo, which will kind of sort of think, we're going to look at poo as children start, you know, even children who, you know, aren't listening very well suddenly think poo, and they want to pay attention. So finding an appropriate stimuli for your children, which could be looking at owl pellets, it could be looking at poo, it could be looking at alien soup. So what turns your children on, and what wakes them up, and what, you know, it inspires them to question, to consider, to think, to be curious. This child, his hobby was growing. And this child is actually a very shy child who was on the SEN register, and we would call him a mute. So he was not one of these children who spoke in class. And yet this is one of the very rare pictures of him where he's smiling. And I taught this child, so I know him well. Answering the register wasn't something that he did. He would I would look up, no, he's in his seat, and you know, I would mark him in. But in the garden, he actually thrived. He felt there wasn't a pressure for him. He was able to go about his business there, and sort of he could speak. He was comfortable speaking out there, and it might be just a word. It might be nothing at all. It might just be you know, his facial expressions. That space was a silent space for him where he had curiosity. And again, you know, both of these children, it was outside that stimulated them. For some children, it is, you know, play that stimulates them. It could be looking at dinosaurs. It could be looking at light. It could be looking at volcanoes that interest them. Another way of engaging children is by using equipment. So thinking about equipment that you have in school and having special resources or something new that is going to trigger the children into questions. And what does this do? How does it work? How can I use it? And then suddenly you've got layers of questions. And something quite as simple as just using microscopes can do that. Thinking about just, you know, the colour of your hair. What does our hair look like? And people, when they tend to look at me, say, oh, Miss has got black hair. And I think, have I really got black hair? And just looking at what does my hair look like? Helen's on the call. What does Helen's hair look like under the microscope? Is that really Helen's hair colour? What does, you know, does a redhead look like a redhead on the microscope? What does our hair look like under the microscope? How can we change it? What happens when we dye hair? And then you've got a whole series of investigations that just lead off from just looking at, you know, our hair under a microscope. Looking at, you know, another example of equipment that we've used is a model of a heart. So you can purchase a model of a heart, and just the children looking at that and observing, what do they see is happening? What do they think is happening? And from that, there are questions that come up related to that. So bringing something new to the children that they haven't seen before. A new resource, a special resource, creates that interest, creates that curiosity, and leads to lots of questions because they haven't seen this before and they want to know. And it sort of snowballs into lots of different questions. Do the children have pre-knowledge? So whatever topic you are teaching, what do they already know? How are you drawing that pre-knowledge out? Have you spoken to them about the topic already? What strategies are you using for that? Are you using Explorify to gauge what they already know? Have you got some visual aids to see what they know? Are you using whiteboards? And very often, in order to engage the whole class, strategies like the whiteboard, everyone is responding. So you're engaging all of the children rather than in a hands up sort of situation where you've got your very keen children who have their hands up and, you know, yes, asking the children with their hands up. So things like just using whiteboards and responding with a Y or a no, there's a yes or a no. So there doesn't need to be a lot of writing on the whiteboard. They could just respond with a thumbs up, thumbs down, as in, have they got a question? Are they thinking? Have they got a response? So that way you're gauging what the children know already and you're pulling them into the lesson so they're focused. Now I want to consider learning styles. Now I want you to think about how you're feeling. जानवरी चक्कर दा पता करना आ इन्हां नूं तुसीं पहले तो आखिरी बदलो केड़ा पहला आ ते केड़ा बाद आ बोलो So that's me speaking in Punjabi, and the visual there, that's Punjabi language. And as a pupil, as you were sitting there, you would, I'd imagine you were like the pupils there. How would you be feeling as I was talking to you in that other language? Are you following what I wanted you to do? Because I did ask you to do something. Did you follow what I was able to ask you? Well, no, I don't think anyone on the call understood the Punjabi to know what I was asking you to do. So how would I be able to focus on this lesson? How am I going to be engaged? I would probably be sort of twiddling my thumb now because I'm not going to be able to follow what the teacher's talking about. I have no idea because I haven't got very good English and I'm not able to follow that in the same way that your Punjabi may not be, you might not be able to focus on what those words are or read them, so you're lost. And that's what often can happen to our children. They feel lost in the lesson and they need something to hook them into that lesson. And that very much depends on their learning styles. For some children, it is the physical things that they need. They do need an object. They do need something to be fidgeting with, to be grappling with, to be to focus them. But some children, it is the physical. It is visible. They need that visual. It's going to be a diagram or some photographs, some images to support them. Using, that's the English of what this is Punjabi, this is the English translation of it. So what I was actually asking you to do was put the life cycle in order. And again, this might not help me either as an EAL child because I'm still struggling with what those words are because my English isn't very good. I might have a bit more of an idea now of what to do now that I can see the pictures and I'm thinking, okay, at least I have context so I can see that's a frog. I recognise that that's a frog. So this lesson is about frogs. So that is our focus, and then start to pull together anything I know about frogs and any experiences I have about frogs from home life or, my experiences. So that language barrier there can be an issue for some children. And the issue isn't that they don't know science or they're not very good at life cycles. The issue there was purely language. So they didn't have the language, but they do probably have some knowledge of frogs and they do have that pre-knowledge. It's just that it's in another language. So in this case, it would be in Punjabi and they don't know how to articulate in English. But using the pictures, they're going to be able to access that lesson and they're going to know what to do, particularly if they've looked around to see what their peers are doing and they understand, right, this is what we've got to do with the pictures. So immediately, I mean, when I started to speak, I think, I know I was paying attention to what you were doing and sort of there was sort of what's she doing, what is she saying? And a disengagement with, oh my God, I don't know what's going on, and sort of a head moving around, I have no idea what this is. With the visual support, pupils can feel involved. And with the use of their language, which sometimes it is possible to do, they feel valued because you have used that language, you know, whatever their mother tongue is, whatever their first or additional language is. Something else that is really good for visual support is the question makers from last year. So giving children that support, that structure, something to follow, an aid to support them with structuring that question is really helpful. And, you know, these are 4 from last year and they are fantastic and they are something that you can hold on to. And just having something to hold on to can be really helpful for behaviourally challenging children because they know they have something. Everyone has something and I've got something too. It may be that everyone doesn't have something and I've got something and I've got something, yay, I've got to pay attention because I've got the question frame and I'm going to be using it. So giving children something to hang on to support them, that they know you've thought about them and you want them to be part of the lesson, that gives them that added sort of keenness to be taking part and to sort of perk up and think, right, I need to pay attention because I'm involved in this lesson. If you haven't seen these, they're on the Great Science Share website and they are amazing, and I would recommend all of them. There's Question Spinner has question starters on there as well. So you've got that first initial word, which again is an added support for children because they've got that first word. So they're not pulling a sentence, they're not pulling a question out of the air. They have a starting point and they can go to the question starter that they're most comfortable with, which might be a what question. It is quite simple, the what questions, but we want them to start off somewhere and then build into the hows and the why questions. So I'd highly recommend using them. You know, that one's my favourite as well. In terms of once we have the question, once the question starters, once we've provided that stimuli for them, they have that question, they have done the practical work, and then we want them to be able to share, and we want that sharing to take place to an audience. This year, Great Science Share will be online, so the audience will be a virtual audience, again, which is really helpful for children with diverse needs, children who are SEND and children who are AAL. I think this will really be quite supportive for them, and I'll explain why I say that. So how can we help the children to share confidently? Well, providing them again with some support and providing them with that structure, rather than having that blank canvas, that blank whiteboard, giving them some guides about what they could be doing or how they're going to navigate through the sharing. This could be keywords, which could be on their word mats, their science mats. It could be words that are on your working wall. It could be objects that they're going to use as part of the share. So it could be a prop, and it's their job. They're going to be looking after. They're going to be making circuit. So that is their role. They're going to do the practical element of it. It could be that they're doing the recording. So they're going to be drawing the diagram. So you're giving them a job, and they've got a focus, which is there. So everyone has a part to play, and they've got a part too. It could be that they're gonna make some notes to help them, sort of like those memory cards, and those notes are very much for those children. So just in the same way we make our notes, and those notes are for us and they're personal to us. The child could be making notes, which could be a doodle, it could be a diagram, it could be one word, it could be bullet points, it could be in their own language, it could be arrows, sort of signposting, this is what I'm going to do, a flow chart, or this is what I'm going to do, then I'm going to do this. It could be numbers, first I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, which sounds very much like success criteria. So if they are EAL, they're able to write in their own language if they choose to. Some of these could actually be things that they record and they remind themselves about. This is what I'm going to do now, this is what I'm going to do, and now this is what I'm going to do. So here you've got examples. Here you've got, this is on the whiteboard, so this is sort of a support for everybody. So these are the lyrics to a song that we wrote as part of the Great Science Share. And this, for some children, they will have memorised that and they know the lyrics to the song. For some children, they need to keep looking at the board to remind themselves of the order and which word comes where. And again, here, this is sort of in a dual language element. So you've got the lamp and you've got it in another language, you've got it in Russian. So that, which again, you can find resources like that on the various websites. So that's making a circuit using Russian words. So the child understands the science concept behind it, and they are trying to link the two words together. So in Russian, the word for lamp, and the word in English. So you've got that support for them. How can we help them to be sharing confidently? So there's a couple of strategies here that we can use. The usual thing that we would do in a classroom when we have a behaviourally challenging child, a new arrival, a child who's come new to your school, we will partner them with another child. And often we'll partner them with an articulate child who is going to be a good role model. And usually this child is a confident child who is not worried about how they're going to look or how they're going to appear. They're there to support that child, and they know that's what I'm here to help this child, but I've also know that I'm confident in my science and what I'm going to be doing. That way the child who's been supported has a good role model who is going to be speaking, who may be doing some of the practical work, so they can look at that person and that is their role model, that is the example that they are trying to follow. There may be an opportunity where they're allowed to model the process. So you can create a model of what are we trying to create. So this is the heart. So they can create a model around it. For instance, if it's the earth, if it's a plant, they could create a model of the parts of a plant. If we were looking at the life cycle of a frog, they could create a model around that. So something practical, visual, that they can then share as part of their learning, which keeps them focused, it keeps them engaged. And there's not necessarily a lot of vocabulary around it, but you can see from what they've produced that that it shows their understanding. Hopefully they're able to label it as well, because that would be excellent. That'd be great for them. It could be that they're going to present the task. So they are going to do some talking. It may be that it's going to be one word. It may be that it's just going to be one sentence. So as part of a group, as part of a pair, one partner's going to do the bulk of the talking, but they are going to have a line to say. And that's very much where that partnership comes in, of trust, of confidence. The first child is going to take the lead, be that strong role model, and the other child's going to come in with the line or the two lines, and they're going to sort of pair off. I'm going to say a sentence, then you're going to say a sentence, and I'm going to be there to take the next sentence, so that they know that they're not going to have to do all the talking on their by themselves, and they're not on their own. They're part of a team, whether that's a 2 or a 3 or a bigger group. In terms of practicing, we often use the term rehearsal time, and we give children rehearsal time, for instance, when they're doing drama, and we ask them, and PE as well, have some rehearsal time, have a practice, and then be ready to speak to the rest of the class, or be ready to share whatever your work with the class. That rehearsal time is really important for these children, because they are vulnerable, because they lack that confidence sometimes, and they're afraid to speak out to that audience. If initially we make the audience a small audience, which could be just a small group, so they could be sharing from one group to another group in the class, and then once they feel confident, they'll be ready to share to the whole class, and then building that practice up. So it could be from group to group, from group to class, and then from your class, let's go and share with the next class, or across a year group, and eventually whole school potentially. So not every child is up to sharing a whole school assembly moment. That needs to be built up, and providing that practice time so that they can repeat what they're saying. And certainly with repeating what they're saying, that initial verbalizing of the words, so them speaking up, saying those words loudly, saying those words correctly, gives them that confidence. So once they've rehearsed the words, they feel more confident and more able to use those words. And when you think about how long, when we're doing assemblies for spring, and year group assemblies, we do so many practices. So you're out in the hall with the whole class and you're getting your speakers to practice. Remember to speak loudly, slowly, clearly. Well, these children need that, although the audience isn't necessarily the whole school, the audience is just within your classroom. In terms of recording work for these children, again, there's lots of different ways to engage them and to value their work, and also to support them so that they can thrive and so that they can participate and they can produce something really brilliant. So here, you know, there's lots of examples there down the side. This is us at a Great Science Share, and we created a piece of music because we felt all our children would be able to participate in that, no matter what their level of language was. And they found it quite therapeutic to be able to sing that song. And it wasn't just a Great Science Share song, it was something they sang at school as well afterwards. Oops. So children could make glossaries, use picture glossaries of work that they're doing in science, which they can be supported with using picture dictionaries. So if you're thinking about Key Stage 1 and looking at parts of the body, again looking at the life cycle of animals, looking at plants, everything, you could use glossaries to be able to translate into their own language, which again is really useful because it also can link their parents into whatever's happening at school. So providing that work, doing that work at school, and then also linking that with home, the parents get to see what you're doing at school and at home, and that you're valuing home life as well, and their home culture, which often it encourages the parents then to support the school, and also, you know, to come to school because they see that you are inclusive and you are involving their children, and they want to be then involved with you. So examples there, I mean, when I think about some of the challenging behaviours that we had at my school, children being able to perform a rap or a song or a cartoon or making a video, they find that really supportive and different, and they find that quite engaging. And certainly, you know, in lots of schools, writing is sort of the we're writing sort of aspect. So it's finding ways of recording that suits the children and suits again what they're interested in and their strengths. And these are going to be the things that you're going to be sharing. So this year, these are the things that you're going to be taking photographs of, taking videos of, and being able to upload. And here you've got an example of, this is Lynn's book. So this is Lynn Bianchi's book, Smart Pickings, and this is a double page spread from it, thinking about ways of sharing and how you can share. So this year, Great Science Share will be online, and everything that you're going to be sharing, you can rehearse and then record. So, you know, if it is static, if it is artwork or it's writing, that again, you know, take a picture and upload. If it is videos and raps and dramas, you can rehearse them and then record them, and if need be, re-record them, so the pupils are happy with whatever is being uploaded, and they actually get to see themselves on video. And we know, those of us on this call who are presenters, you know what it's like to be recorded. I think, well, teachers do, if when we're recording what we're doing, certainly at the moment with the Zoom lessons and the various types of ways we've been getting you know, teaching our children, you know what it's like to be recording lessons. It's very and our pupils are like that too. So giving them that chance to record, re-record, use photos, use diagrams, use those models, and they can all then be uploaded this year. Think about creativity, and you know, we've used music in our Great Science Share before, we've used art before as well. This year there's also a focus on dance, so there is that Great Science Share is focusing on creativity, so using the various different arts to support the Great Science Share. The other good thing about this year is that when you know, we've got a class of 30, they all do a piece of work. We're not able to display all 30 examples on the board because they just don't fit on the boards. So this time round, you can upload some of them to on Great Science Share Day, and the others can then go onto your display. So it's a way of sort of a win-win. You can have some of the work up online and some of it can be up in your classroom. I think children need to be, you know, 2 keywords. We need to be comfortable, we need to be confident. And as adults, we want to be comfortable and confident in our classrooms, and the children want to be comfortable and they want to be confident in the classrooms. And that, I think that those are the 2 key words. So find what medium is comfortable for your children and they feel confident in, and use that when you're taking part in the Great Science Share. So our aims at the beginning were to think about the diverse needs of our pupils in participating in the Great Science Share for schools, to think about some of the our SEND children and our EAL children and those low science capital children, and think about creative and imaginative ways in which we can possibly record and respond to their questions. So I'm hoping you've seen through the session how we can sort of encourage questions and look at what the children, you know, provide stimuli that are appropriate for the children, that excite the children, that engage the children to come up with those questions, and then ways in which they can share that they feel comfortable in, and use that rehearsal time. And I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions, and you're welcome to ask questions. And we're a small group, so you can put your mics on and talk to me.
I'm going to ask a question, Kulvinder.
Go on.
Yeah, when you're talking about special educational needs, we've worked with a school of deaf children, Blanche Neville School, so I'm thinking of other children in that regard. How can you accommodate and cope with those as well?
So children who are, you know, children in you know, deaf children, especially, you know, physically handicapped children, for instance, they still access science. So there is science curriculum for them, and they would still, you know, we want them to be curious. And again, it's about providing stimuli that suits them. So for those children, they're going to be very tactile and want, you know, lots of touching and lots of practical, and they would more visual as well. So it very much, you know, looking at what your children are like and matching resources to what your children are like. So if your children, you know, they're not, you know, they're deaf, they will want to have some, you know, sensory, practical, smelling, which is where, you know, children tend to love poo, using their senses, using, you know, the smell, because their other senses are going to be more heightened, so that they're not able to hear, but their other senses are going to be, you know, improved as such. So they're, you know, taste, touch, and seeing are going to be important for those children. And then vice versa, if you've got blind children, obviously they're not going to be seeing, they're going to rely heavily on hearing and on touching. So you're going to look at resources around that. What are you touching? How does it feel like? And around that. Is that right, Helen?
Yeah. And will presumably also any presentations or something that are done for the Great Science Share that are done, will they have subtitles or other things like that?
We're trying to look into, I'm not sure how widespread this is going to be able to be this year, but looking into signing for some events. So I'm not sure the scope of that at the moment, but we're thinking about it. And I think we had some Welsh language translation stuff last year, so just trying to find different ways to be accessible. But yeah, because we're fairly new to online, we're sort of feeling it out as we go. People like Kulvinder are very helpful.
I think that'd be great, because obviously that's an inclusivity thing as well. If for example, with the Welsh language or the translation, because if you're hoping to do quite a few, you know, to engage quite a few schools in Wales, then obviously having some of the lessons in Welsh, that would be really helpful. Yeah,
I think while we're online, I think that we're going to be seeing, you know, there'll be lots of photographs being uploaded and possibly videos as well. And I think children talking, using sign language, etc., is going to be, you know, that's going to be great. And I can see schools doing that, because I work with a few special schools as well. I think when we go back to face, then we want again to be bringing those schools together and raising an awareness of, you know, how are they going to communicate, and mixing schools up, so it's not just a SEND school with another SEND school. We want children coming together from a range of schools, and I think that's something that we need to think about when we, next year, hopefully, when we are, Great Science Share is back to face again.
There's a question there, Kulvinder. I'm not sure whether you can see the questions. It says, is there a way of using this as a way undertaking transitions between primary and secondary?
Definitely. I mean, Great Science Share, that's one of it does work in Key Stage 3 as well. So it's something, I mean, certainly, when we, I work in Barking and Dagenham, I was working in Barking and Dagenham, and we were using the secondary site as our host, and getting the STEM ambassadors from the secondary school to come to the Great Science Share, and getting Year 7 to come to the Great Science Share to create, that support with transition. And so that there's infinite possibilities. You could actually have a Great Science Share with children working together from, Year 5 and Year 7, and sharing together because they've worked on their questions together. It could be that the secondary children come to the primary and share. So yeah, there's infinite possibilities. It's just find your secondary school and ask them, discuss with them what you would want to do. It's also possible to do it virtually, so you could actually zoom into classrooms into the secondary school, and vice versa. So it's all sort of, you can take it in any direction you really want to. It's about the children talking, it's about them sharing science, it's about them being curious, having questions, and then investigating those questions and having responses, having something that they can, an answer, which may then lead on to, more questions and more investigations. So yeah, definitely you can use it for transition.
I'm wondering this year, is that going to be possible to do that at all this year or not? I know when we were in Manchester, for example, I think some children from Derby High were going around as sort of ambassadors showing little science things, but how will that work in an online environment?
We will try to host that sort of thing online. I think on a smaller scale, people are welcome to as well, but as centrally, Derby High are going to be involved again, and we'll sort of create opportunities for sharing online, school to school. Obviously they won't have necessarily the buzz of being face to face, but there was quite a lot of buzz around being online last year. So Kulvinder, maybe regionally as well.
I think yeah, there is it is possible to do that. It depends on how strong your transition links are already. If you're going to make transition links now with a view to it, I think there's a lot of working out to do. If you already have links, it's something you can certainly get going, because you've already got the connection with that person. Then you can share, you can talk to them about Great Science Share. You already have an understanding. Yes, if you've got links already, I would encourage you to, because it's really powerful to have children, to have the younger children. We had Year 2s talking to the Year 6s and 7s, and it's amazing, because the wow factor for the Year 6s and 7s is, wow, this is Year 2 talking to me. And we're stood there really proudly thinking, look at the Year 2s, go children. And they've got something to share. So it's not just, oh, we're listening to Year 2s because we're listening to Year 2. They've actually done, their question was amazing. They've got great questions, and they can talk about what they've done, which is that is the Great Science Share. And again, with the older children, with the secondary children, you could pick out children who are shy, who are feeling vulnerable, who are not feeling confident, to come to work with the younger children and sort of nurture. And it's nurturing both sets of children. So the Year 7, the Year 9s, we've worked with some Year 9 children as well doing that. They found that really powerful for the Year 9s. Sort of almost, their teachers have said that they felt really valued because they had a role to play in the Great Science Share. And certainly this year, I know at least of one high school that is taking part, they're Key Stage 3, and the teachers, she's signed up and ready to go as a secondary school.
There's another question here from Gary Kulvinder. Do you have any suggestions of how best to assess children such as EAL or SEND within science for prior knowledge and for the end of the unit?
Okay, so for prior knowledge, I think I've you know, spoken a lot about Explorify in the last few weeks, using Explorify as a tool for assessing the children, particularly as they've come back, you know, children have come back into school now. Their learning has been varied for the last sort of 2 to 3 terms. We're trying to work out what they do know, what knowledge has stuck, what learning went through to them, what bits have they missed. So using Explorify, because it is visual, and I, you know, so thinking about the webinar today, Explorify, the odd one out, it's very visual. Children can use 1 word, children can use 2 words to describe it, and they might just do a yes, no. It could be, I think it's number 1, 2 and 3. So the resources aren't particularly linked to literacy. They are all visual. So there's videos, pictures, and with that you can see what do the children already, what is their prior knowledge, where are they up to at the moment, how much knowledge have they remembered and how much have they brought with them. So you can move the lesson forward, or you might need to pull the lesson back a bit depending on what their responses are. Certainly, and same with end of unit, again, looking at work that they've recorded. So again, that goes back to how are you asking them to record? If it's written, they may be struggling, and send children, you know, often they don't want to do a lot of writing. They much prefer doing drawing. They much prefer using an iPad. They much, you know, there are different ways for them to record and still find out what they know.